April 12, 2015, a seemingly ordinary day at a small San Francisco lab, when a 31-year-old lab technician whispered a secret that would shatter a multi-billion-dollar empire. Two employees, Tyler Schultz and Erica Cheung, risked everything to expose the illusion that Elizabeth Holmes and the Theranos had built around a pocket-sized blood testing device that promised to revolutionize medicine. Their courage ignited a firestorm that would expose one of the most audacious frauds in Silicon Valley history. The Theranos began in 2003, when a teenage prodigy named Elizabeth Holmes dropped out of Stanford to chase a dream, a device that could run hundreds of tests on a single drop of blood. With a black turtleneck wardrobe and a charismatic swagger, Holmes raised more than $700 million from venture capitalists, celebrities, and political donors, touting a vision of cheap, fast, and accessible diagnostics. By 2014, the company boasted a valuation of $9 billion, and Holmes, at 31, was hailed as the next Steve Jobs. Behind the glossy press releases, however, a different reality simmered. The Edison blood testing machine, the heart of the Theranos' promise, was riddled with engineering flaws. Test results were inaccurate, and the proprietary nanotainer could not hold enough blood for reliable analysis. In an effort to mask these failures, the Theranos employed a culture of secrecy, intimidation, and non-disclosure agreements. Employees were forbidden from discussing their work, and a secret sauce laboratory operated behind locked doors, inaccessible even to senior management. It was within this pressure cooker that two whistleblowers emerged. Erica Cheung, a former research scientist, first noticed that the data generated by the Edison devices were inconsistent with standard laboratory equipment. She saw patients receiving false diagnoses, a risk that could jeopardize lives. Tyler Schultz, the grandson of the Theranos' board chairman and a former lab associate, discovered that the company was selectively reporting only successful tests, while suppressing the overwhelming failure rate. Both felt a moral imperative that outweighed loyalty to a company that promised to change the world. In mid-2015, Cheung approached a journalist from the Wall Street Journal, sharing internal documents and detailed accounts of the inaccuracies. Around the same time, Schultz, spurred by his grandfather's growing unease, also reached out to the same journalist, providing additional data and a personal testimony. The WSJ's investigative team, led by John Carroll, began a series of deep-dive articles that peeled back the glossy veneer, exposing that the Theranos was using third-party machines for most of its tests, while the Edison device was a glorified prototype. The revelation sent shockwaves through the biotech community. Regulators scrambled. In 2016, the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services, CMS, revoked the Theranos' CLIA certification, banning Holmes from owning or operating a lab for 2 years. The Securities and Exchange Commission, SEC, filed civil charges, alleging that Holmes and former President Ramesh Sunny Balwani had engaged in an elaborate fraud that misled investors. In 2018, Holmes settled with the SEC, surrendering voting control, returning 18.9 million shares, and paying a $500,000 fine. While Balwani was barred from serving as an officer or director of a public company, the criminal case finally took center stage in 2021. A federal grand jury in the Northern District of California indicted Holmes on 11 counts of fraud and conspiracy, while Balwani faced 12 similar counts. The trial, which began in September 2021, was a media spectacle. Prosecutors painted a picture of a charismatic leader who cultivated a cult-like devotion, demanding absolute loyalty and punishing dissent with threats of lawsuits and public shaming. Defense attorneys argued that Holmes believed in her technology and that any misrepresentations were optimistic projections, rather than deliberate deception. The courtroom became a stage for the two whistleblowers. Cheung testified that she had warned senior leadership repeatedly that the Edison device could not produce reliable results, yet her concerns were dismissed. Schultz recounted the day he discovered a spreadsheet showing a 70% failure rate for a key cholesterol test, a figure that was never disclosed to investors. Their testimonies humanized the abstract numbers, underscoring the real-world consequences of falsified data, misdiagnoses, unnecessary treatments, and eroded trust in medical innovation. On January 3, 2022, the jury returned a guilty verdict on 4 counts for Holmes, 3 counts of wire fraud and 1 count of conspiracy to commit wire fraud. The remaining counts were dismissed at the judge's request. Balwani, tried separately, was found guilty on all 12 counts in July 2022, receiving a 20-year prison sentence. Holmes was sentenced later that year to 11 years and 3 months, a term that underscored the severity of betraying not just investors, but patients whose health was put at risk. The aftermath rippled far beyond the courtroom. The Theranos saga prompted a wave of regulatory reforms aimed at tightening oversight of diagnostic startups. In 2022, the FDA introduced new guidelines requiring clearer validation data before granting emergency use authorizations for novel medical devices. Venture capital firms grew more cautious, instituting science due diligence teams to verify the technical claims of biotech startups before funding. For the whistleblowers, the victory was bittersweet. Cheung and Schultz received modest settlements from the company's liquidation, but their professional reputations were forever linked to the scandal. Both have since become outspoken advocates for ethical transparency in science, speaking at conferences and mentoring young researchers about the importance of speaking truth to power. Their stories have inspired legislation, such as the Whistleblower Protection Act Amendment of 2023, which extended legal safeguards to employees in the health technology sector. Theranos' collapse also left a lingering cultural imprint. Subscribe to The Verdict for more stories like this.